Lee, thanks a lot for doing this. I know we've spoken a lot, well, a lot over the past sort of 2 or 3 months, but specifically about the challenge of a digital and IT function operating, if you like, in an agile format, and I suppose that the sort of incompatibility of the wider organisation that is not used to that agile way of working. And I think it's something that's echoed by many of your peers. So keen to discuss that today. Do you want to just sort of frame it in terms of the challenges that you face with Agile and the wider organisation?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'll do my best, and I think it's one of these discussions that's really interesting to see how kind of other people have found it, and whether it's just me and some of the organisation I've worked in, or whether they've experienced the same thing. So just kind of good to put out there the experience I've had and see how that goes. So yeah, I think, look, when the organisations I've worked in, we tend to have a model where we bring in partners to deliver on our behalf. So I've worked in third sector organisations where maybe we haven't got the capability or capacity to develop kind of cutting edge technology in order to support the service users that we've got. So we always had a tendency to look outside, bring partners in, whether that was a strategic partner or someone to deliver. And they're always kind of fairly fundamental agile organisations that develop and deliver in an agile way. So one of the first problems I sort of encountered was being able to contract effectively with an agile organisation. So the organisations I'd worked in had always been traditional waterfall organisations. So from a finance perspective, from a governance perspective, from a, you're right down to your kind of project team with your SROs, all very kind of au fait with waterfall. So, this is what we want to get in 18 months time. Here are the targets we want to hit along the way, and let's see how we get along and measure the spend and the delivery against each of those milestones. And obviously in an agile world, that's quite different. And, you might know what kind of thing you want to deliver over the 18-month period, but it's constantly aligned with kind of user stories and constantly engaging with the people that want that bit of technology. So it's constantly kind of evolving over the period. So it's much harder to kind of measure spend and measure finance, because you might have a really complex kind of story points, and the velocity of the team developing it might change over a period of time. So it's quite difficult, and I think that causes tension within the organisation. So what you tend to find happening, or I've certainly seen, is organisations can tend to lose their nerve and almost want to go from agile to waterfall. So if you can find a way of contracting, and if you can get the organisation to deliver in an agile way, over the first 3 months, that there's a nervousness around the delivery, can't measure in the same way, and almost want to then impose a waterfall contract onto an agile organisation. I don't know if that made sense, Justin.
It makes sense to me. So essentially, in my language, waterfall is very well defined in terms of things like outcome, time, cost. Agile is, if you like, has a wider definition of outcome, and the various milestones, and things like cost and milestones aren't able to be prescribed at that stage, because we're not entirely too sure how the outcome will evolve.
Yeah, and that's the whole point of Agile, is you don't quite know what, you're not overly sure exactly what you want at the end of it. You know what the benefits it wants to deliver. So if you're building a bridge over a river, that's been constructed thousands of times, it's engineering, you know exactly how it's going to work. That's done in a waterfall way in construction, but in digital products, you don't necessarily understand exactly what you want to get at the end, because you're constantly evolving the product. So throughout the development cycle, throughout the sprint cycle, you're developing user stories. Then there's ceremonies that go on that engage with the product owners, which will test whether that development's in the right way and can refine as you go along. So it's all an ever-evolving, an ever-evolving project, rather than defined kind of as you go along. And I think certainly in the third sector that I've been involved with, that's always been quite a tension and quite a difficult thing, because, I think part of it is you've got a board of trustees, and part of it is you run on donations, and there is a big desire to ensure that your donors are getting the maximum value for money, and I completely get that. So I do understand the tension, but I think when one of the consequences is, and I've seen it, is when you've got an agile organisation delivering in an agile way, you get a bit of an uncomfortableness in the organisation, and then the goalposts are changed in terms of almost holding an agile organisation to account in a waterfall way. and then you suddenly want some agility, so you go back to that organization and say, actually, we want to change that, and they're like, well, no, you've added financial penalties now, we've got to deliver in a waterfall way. So it's a real conflict in the organization, a real tension, that's really hard to resolve. And I think there's some courage needed within an organization. I think as long as you've got the governance, people that really understand Agile, you're meeting your parts, you're providing the product owners, they're properly educated. I think there's definitely a bit of courage needed from organizations to see that Agile process through.
And are the product owners part of the digital team, or are the product owners part of the wider organization?
They tend to be business experts, so they're the experts from that particular part of the business. So they're kind of they're the people that are responsible for ensuring that the part of the business get the product that part of the business need, rather than getting a really good technology project that technology think you need. Yeah,
totally get it. And what, in terms of the two parts of the equation not quite marrying up, what are the sort of potential consequences? What's the worst case scenario for these worlds not ever aligning?
Well, I mean, I've seen that happen, unfortunately, and I think you end up getting a product still, but what you end up doing is imposing Waterfall and an Agile organization that's delivering for you. And obviously they're very passionate about Agile is the right way to work. They've always worked like that. And I think you get kind of a lack of motivation then from your partner. You get a lack of agility from your partner. So if you want any changes made to any of the development, it becomes more difficult. And you end up almost working in a waterfall way. So you end up defining outcomes for a year's time and developing a product for a year's time. And you end up getting the product that you wanted to, that you've defined today, but in a year's time, which may not be relevant anymore.
Yeah, I've got it. In terms, at least at my level anyway, in terms of that, the product in a year's time, the other thing that I find interesting is to understand how you as a CIO continue to equip your team with the right skills, particularly with steep learning curve, with brand new technologies. Certainly from my perspective, seemingly, new acronyms arriving pretty much daily. But what's your sort of strategy, your sort of people strategy, if you like, for your team to ensure you've 9 times out of 10 got the competency required with this evolving technology that keeps coming up week on week, seemingly?
Yeah, well, I think, look, people are a critical success factor in any transformation program or any new development. And I think, if you forget that the people need to evolve, what you end up is getting new bits of technology that suddenly become out of date because you haven't got the capability to continually improve that product. And really what you should be doing is having architecture that's reusable, and you should be having systems that are in place that are future-proofed. And you can't do that without bringing people along. So, I think it's a mix of good recruitment, so future filling rather than backfilling. So looking ahead at your target architecture and your target systems and technology, and ensuring that your recruitment covers off that future rather than backfilling. But at the same time, you need to look at a really structured development program for your technology teams to ensure that they're capable of coding or working with or supporting the new technologies and new systems that you're putting in place. But almost as important as that is supporting the business in their transformation. So so in terms of adding content, or in terms of kind of low level support or whatever it might be, you're going to have users within the business that aren't technology people that still need to be able to utilize and support that bit of technology. So there's a whole organizational transformation piece that needs to take place, or certainly a strategy to take place in order to make sure everybody's got the capabilities and skills. But it's really difficult to get right, because then there's pressures on supporting legacy products. You need a transitional period if you're using a legacy product and a new product. There's a period where you've probably got some dual running, so you still need the skills to support the legacy product, and you need the skills to support the new product. So it's got to be a really well thought out process in terms of making sure you got the right skills and capabilities. And certainly in the third sector, I found working with a strategic partner and almost embedding them into your development teams and your support teams is a really good way to upskill your teams in a transitional way and then adopt kind of a strategy to have that system or that technology as business as usual, and then you drop the strategic partner's resource out, and suddenly you can pick that up yourselves.
Good stuff. One final question, Lee.
Yeah.
How do you personally, or how does your team keep up to date with all this technology that's coming on the market? Because obviously you have your full-time job, business as usual, keeping the lights on, if you like. Yeah. Then you've got all the ongoing projects that are probably in various states of completion or non-completion. How do you and your team keep up to date with what I would class as emerging tech?
I think if you ask any technology person, whether whatever background they've come from, or they've ended up in technology, you're in technology because you're a technology geek. You'll find me that generally everything I've got in my house is integrated with each other. I've got virtual assistants. I've got the newest iPhone. I've got the newest PCs. I want to make sure my home's as up to date with technology as possible. So I think you're networked and connected in to that future tech. Yeah. Your mind is thinking ahead of the curve already. And then I do think there are some kind of key memberships. I think Gartner are a really key resource in terms of their world leading analysts to be able to support what future trends are there. But I think generally, if you're a tech person, you're a tech person, and you're just keen to learn and absorb new technology, and you connect yourself into that world. But I think there is a responsibility for an organization to ensure that personal and professional development is always time for that individual within a working on a day to be able to do that research as well. But yeah, I do think it's like anything, if you're whatever your keen interest is, you're always ahead of the curve, if you like.
Got you. Brilliant.